Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, which features interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, without further ado, I'll hand you over to your host, Holly Wharton.
Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, episode 130. This is your host, Holly Wharton. I'm here with today's special guest, Jane Talbot. Jane is an author, storyteller, and creativity coach with a career in personal development that spans almost 30 years. She runs storytelling courses which teach people the fundamental skills of oral storytelling. She also helps writers and other artists connect more effectively with the most creative part of themselves and enjoy the promotional aspect of their work more fully. Her recent release, a collection of dark fairy tales called The Faerie Thorn and Other Stories, was recently published. Welcome, Jane.
Hello, Holly. It's good to be here.
I'm so excited to have you today talking about creativity and business stuff. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today? Because I think it's really interesting that you've got such a creative background blended with kind of the practical bits of coaching. So tell us a little bit about how that happened for you.
Well, I'm quite old, long in the tooth, I think is the phrase. So I'm coming up to 50, but I had a sense of wanting to be involved with personal development right as early as my 20s. So I ran my very first personal development program in 1986. Mm-hmm. And it was on a wind-powered island in Denmark, living in a wigwam for 3 weeks. It's everything you should be doing in your 20s. And having had that experience, which was really, it was just gorgeous, I thought, well, I'm onto something here. And I think the mistake I made when I said to myself, I'm onto something here, is I had a really fixed idea about what that meant. And over my professional life, I followed, I suppose, what you'd call quite a traditional path. I became a coach. I had a corporate background, and at that time, in the mid-90s, coaching for improved performance was the big phrase of the day. And that's when coaching started to take off. And then I found out about NeuroLinguistic Programming. And in 2005, I set up a training and coaching business. And I would say it would be quite a traditional model. I'd run training courses for NLP and hypnosis, and I would have clients and I would coach them. And I absolutely loved what I did. And at the time, it was great, but I was still working to this very fixed model of this is what coaching is, and this is what training is. This is the kind of training I like to do. But I was so curious about people that I hadn't really funneled down the kind of coaching I wanted to do. So I was pretty much working with a whole range of coaching challenges. And then I started to get a bit worried when this whole internet thing came about. I think I had a computer in 2003, and I was living in the Highlands, or on the edge of the Highlands in Scotland. I thought, this will pass. And of course, it didn't pass. And I still had this very fixed model. It's like, if I keep coaching and training, everything will be okay. I'm really loving it. But then I really sort of started to watch what was going on, and this idea of sales funnels and having online programs. And I did absolutely everything. I thought, I can't be left behind. I can't be a dinosaur. I must do these things. And I did everything. And do you know what, Holly? Nothing worked. Nothing worked. And I thought, this doesn't seem to be very fair, because I'm trying to become really modern and everything. And my offline business was fine. Mm-hmm. But it becomes more challenging when you have a situation in the economy where organizations might be cutting back in their spending. And so you do need a broader portfolio. And I thought, I've got to really take advantage of this idea of having a global market. But something just, no matter what I did, no matter what blueprints I followed, me and my rigid idea about what I thought my business should be didn't really catch fire.
Interesting. So what was the tipping point for you where things just shifted?
Well, I think the reason I'm really interested and hopeful about talking with you is that I stumbled across something really. I made an unconscious choice, and I consciously rationalized it as making a decision that, do you know what, I'm just going to do something for myself. So what I decided on the 31st of December 2013, I am going to have an adventure every day.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I was an adventurer. I've always been adventurous and doing traditional adventuring type of things like climbing mountains and traveling and so on. And I have lived since 2011 in Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland is quite a small country. Mm-hmm. And if you want to travel anywhere, it's actually quite expensive. I have a teenage son. I have family responsibility. So the teenage son means a lot of weekends are taken up with travel for activities, because we live in a rural place, so we have to travel everywhere. So really, the thing that nourished me the most, this adventuring, wasn't really happening. So I thought, look, I am working really hard on my business. This is like, it seems to be going nowhere. I am now living a life where this adventure isn't feeding me. Can I just have a little adventure every day? What would happen if I did? And the idea was, so for me, just to feel more alive. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really realise what I was doing. That was my conscious thing. I just want to feel a little bit more alive. But unconsciously, I think I was trying to get myself back on track, back in alignment with a profession, a vocation, I think is the right word. And I think that'll probably be the right word for a lot of people who are self-employed, solopreneurs. How can I get myself back on track to do something which even I can put a lot of energy into and it yield results for me and completely enjoy myself at the same time? Now, I didn't know I was heading in this direction, but I think there's a part of me that said, look, come on, you've been doing this long enough now. Yeah, you look, come on, listen, basically listen. So I realised at the outset I was quite out of touch with my internal mechanism for saying you're on track. So I now know. So when I started out the very first week, so an adventure every single day for a year. So that's 365 days of adventure. And it was just to be something quite small, just to get that feeling.
So what kinds of things were you doing?
Well, the first week I actually tried to steal a supermarket trolley from Tesco's. And even now thinking about it actually feels really exciting, right? Because it's a sign, if you're listening in the UK, you'll know this, a sign, it says, do not take your supermarket trolley beyond this threshold. It will stop. And I thought, well, is this true? I want to do a bit of a myth buster. Is it true? And I actually got it past the line. But then it does stop. And I had that whole thing, well, I'm breaking a rule here. And this feels thrilling. But now what I realize is in those early weeks, I had to do quite a lot of things to make the finer distinctions between thrill and adventure. And so adventure, and everyone will have their own word, their own thing, the thing that really makes them feel alive and on track inside. So I did things like I ate Brussels sprouts in the first week. Well, I didn't eat Brussels sprouts because I think they're absolutely poisonous. I couldn't do it. So I was constantly breaking rules until I gradually was able to notice that I'm noticing things on the outside. Something is drawing my attention. So that's how I worked every day. What is drawing my attention? I'll try that. And then I had to make the link between what is drawing my attention and how do I feel inside when my attention is drawn to something. And so then I started to use it as a kind of navigation system. I'm only going to start to do the things that draw my attention and I get this special feeling inside, because there's a difference between stealing or trying to steal a supermarket trolley and then having a feeling where, this, it's a very, I would use the word almost sacred feeling. Like, this is my thing. And it's almost like a voice in your head says, this is my thing. And I think I'm keen to talk to you because it took me 6 months to get to that point of, right, I know what's going on now. And if I follow this is going to change my life. And if I'd paid attention earlier and followed the threads, then in my life, then I would have been doing now what I'm doing now I would have been doing years ago. And I almost wish I had. And a lot of people say, I wish I hadn't, I don't want to live without regret. And I'm certainly leveraging everything I've done before now. But I really wish I knew how to do this before. And it's not that I didn't know how to do it. It's not that other people don't know how to do it. But I think we stopped paying attention to those signals. So things started to narrow down for me. So I think it was about May time, I went into Tesco's features large in my spiritual growth, Holly.
That's something I never expected to hear.
I know. So I walked into Tesco's and I went to the book section with my trolley, and then I was drawn to a Mills and Boon novel. Have you ever read it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'd never read one before, so I thought, well, this is today's adventure. It's calling me. And there was an unusual feeling about it, and I couldn't make sense of it because I wouldn't say I was a Mills and Boon person. I've never read one before, but romantic fiction is not something I'd read. And I read it in an afternoon, and I thought, well, how hard can this be? Write one myself. So I started writing one, and I felt really good about it. Only that I actually killed off all the men within the first 3 chapters.
Was that an accident or was that on purpose?
Well, it seemed to be the bit I enjoyed the most. There was no romance, there was no kissing. Everybody died a horrible death. And I was really good at writing those bits. And that was the tipping point. That was me acknowledging there's something about writing. It's not romantic fiction. There's something about words here that I'm missing. This is the track that I'm going to follow. And as soon as I started listening, I think, to that feeling, so the feeling, obviously it's a non-verbal communication, but it's loud and clear. I then followed that thread all the way home to its absolute end. And it resulted in me writing a book. Now, a book of short stories, dark fairy tales, quite death. There's a high body count. And if anybody looked at my search, Google search record, oh my goodness me, how long does it take a body to decompose in water? Was one of my searches. And I think if you'd asked me in 2013, what would I have experienced by the end of the year? I would never have thought it would take me where it has. But there's a huge difference in the way I'm experiencing my business. The first thing is I changed it. Yeah. So I'm still doing NLP training, hypnosis training, most of that's offline. I decided to stop advertising those courses. I do freelance work for other companies, really happy to do that. And now I follow this thread. So the book, I had a traditional publishing deal. The book's just been published, and it's brought me into a community where I belong. So I think one of the things of being self-employed, solopreneur is, where's I think the word that's used is tribe. And that tribe isn't just the people who would buy your products or services or be interested in the message you have for them. It's also your peers. And I never found my place. And then suddenly, by following this thread, here I am. I found my place amongst other writers and other creatives. And so now I'm using all that came before from NLP and hypnosis to enrich, to bring something to that community. And the change is, instead of me having to push really hard, instead of me having to create sales funnels and follow the rules and still get no results, miracle. I would actually call it miracles. It makes me laugh that people actually call me who I don't know. I think, wow, this is amazing. And it's not that it's effortless. There is effort involved. But I think the kind of effort that involved is a bit like a hose pipe. So if you can put a lot of effort, a lot of water into a hose pipe, but if there are holes anywhere in the hose pipe, by the time the stream comes out the other end, it's quite weak. If you've got this robust channel and you put your energy, your water into it, then this huge force comes out the other end, and it's a completely different experience. So I feel by following this instinct, by trusting the instinct and spending time making the finer distinctions between what I'm noticing and how I'm responding to it, that it's taken me to a place. It's all, and I'm certain that we've become culturally outside our bodies. We rely on our rational thinking, and so if you're always in your head and never in your body, you're missing most of the information. Yes. So I'm back in listening to that information and then evaluating it consciously and then deciding where to take the next step. And it's become much easier as a business model. It feels more rewarding. So in a business, if you're self-employed, I think one of the big things is you put a load of stuff in, your energy, and it's whatever comes back is a direct result of your effort and a bit of luck. Whereas, but it doesn't work like that. You can pour in loads of energy and nothing come back. And for me, that's what must be true in order for that to work out in that way. And I think one of the answers is that we've grown up in a culture where people will say, well, actually, if you put your mind to it, if you learn, and this is a big message from all the how to work LinkedIn, how to work YouTube. If use this blueprint and you put effort in, you will
work hard, and you hustle.
You will get results. And I think, well, the issue with that is, yes, you can work hard and you can get as far as you can get, but it doesn't mean to say that it's necessarily the right thing for you. And it creates a noise around the thing that you could be doing that would bring you sufficient joy for you to feel, this is me, I'm on track. I'm not a religious person. I don't necessarily believe that we have a one purpose. But I do believe that we've all got something, from the hero's journey point of view, from Joseph Campbell's point of view, that we start to hear the call. I can own up and say that I knew that I should have been doing this when I was about 18, but I didn't. I made a sensible choice at that point, which took me down a different route, a sensible choice, that we do have these signals, we do have this call, and all this noise about you should be doing this, you should be doing that, if only you did this, covers up that signal.
Yeah, exactly. So, Jane, how can other people kind of get the same results? Do they need to replicate your process of doing 365 days of adventure, or have you streamlined this process now?
Well, I mean, I think it's about people. What I didn't realize, the thing I didn't learn, it took me a while to learn, was that the information, if you like, the navigation system is all about getting back into your body. So I think the first thing is to be aware that when we're making decisions or when we're noticing things, how do you know whether you're heading in the right direction? The answer isn't necessarily a cerebral, intellectual one. It's also this feeling information available to you. So the shortcut is when you're making decisions about your business or when something piques your interest, is it piquing your interest? And I think this is like the new one is like the fear of missing out thing. Is it piquing your interest because you think you ought to be doing this? And that there's an intellectual reasoning given that if you do this, you're on the right track. Or are you doing this because you've got all this other information that says, you should be doing this? So the question is, how do you know when you've been on track in other times in your life? When have you felt the most alive? What does that feel like in your body? Where do you feel it? What's the quality and the nature of that feeling? How full do you feel? And then when you start to make decisions or notice things, is that feeling present or not? And I don't think, so I set up a project and actually maybe I took it offline, but I'd be quite happy to send you a sheet of information. And it was a 5-day project for people then to get in touch with these feelings and then to start to be able to follow their own thread by doing various things. So for some people who already have a more or less sense is if you stop pretending and if you stop listening to other people, what is it you really want to do? Some people will be able to answer that question. For other people, it's like for me, I got to the point where it was a complete open playing field. Let's try. I had to try a range of things. And I think for some people, it may be a question of experimentation. And for me, it was like, first of all, I had to narrow down the channel. And the first narrowing down was, it's something creative. And And then I composed music. I composed Japanese style poetry. I did a load of, I drew. I wasn't very good at that, painting and all that. I wasn't very good. And I narrowed it right down. So I think most people have a rough sense of the kind of thing even if you look back over your life about patterns of when you were feeling your fullest, there's probably some clues there. And I think that would be my top tip. Getting back in your body and linking up the feelings that are present when you're paying attention or noticing things or feeling piqued or pulled by things on the outside.
Excellent. A lot of people talk about getting back into your body. What's the easiest way to do that? Because I think so many of us are so stuck in our heads. How do we make that shift?
Well, if anybody has got a meditation practice who's listening, they probably know that one of the top tips is to pay attention to your breathing. So just to pay attention to your breathing and then allow your awareness to slip low into your body, allow your body to rest. That's one way of doing it. So breathing can get you very quickly back into your body. And the other way is to use a technique. We'd use it in hypnosis and self-hypnosis, going into peripheral vision. So what peripheral vision does, it helps you to access the alpha state. So if you imagine your brain or your mind turning over like an engine of a car, then you're basically shifting down a gear. And when you're in the alpha state in peripheral vision, that opens up the channel between the conscious mind, that's the head, the intellectual, the thing that most of us rely on. And it opens up the channel between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. You could say your body is the equivalent of the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is the storehouse of your emotions. And it's a thing that also makes associations and connections. So this is the part of you that will be able to say, aha, now you're noticing this because, or isn't it interesting that you're making connections here, there, and everywhere? Your conscious mind doesn't have access to this information. Your unconscious mind makes those associations. So this allows this flow between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. It slows everything down, and it switches off the fight or flight response and brings you back into your body. And the way to get into peripheral vision is if you were to look at a spot on the wall, just imagine a spot on the wall, and then you keep your head still, but you raise your eyes slightly and then extend your vision. So you're moving from narrow foveal vision, then extend your vision so you're maybe seeing a wall to the side, or maybe you can notice what's on the floor, on the ceiling, but you're still looking ahead. And that will begin to relax you and then open up this flow state and get you back into your body. So it's that it's very relaxing, and it opens you up to more information as well.
That's a great tip. Thank you. So, Jane, do you have any women business mentors or creative mentors? Are there any women who inspire you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the way I'm wired up is I've always found people who are different and working in different fields interesting to me. And I think the most attractive to me are people who are themselves, really themselves, and they're doing their thing. And so for me, there's a woman that I have been on her email list for a while now, and I've just done an online Facebook-based project with her. She's called Helen Scott. And she is really, really herself and very generous with her time and with her connection. So I find very inspiring the way she's respected, if you like, her own thread. And then I've got a huge amount of respect for, and she's become a friend of mine, Cara Wilde. And she is very busy stepping out and opening her offering up to people in a very, very authentic way. So she is a channel. Now, this wouldn't be my thing at all, but I think it's incredible the way she's like really standing steady in her message in a way that more people could connect with than I think maybe imaginable for other people in maybe, I want to be respectful, but maybe esoteric, things that maybe from a mass point of view would be considered esoteric. So I've got a huge amount of respect for her. Yeah.
Excellent. So, Jane, how can other women entrepreneurs or people in creative worlds work with you? What options do you have as far as creative coaching or other offerings?
So people can work with me on a one-to-one basis. So anything that's to do with creative expression, whether you're at the beginning of the journey or you've been on the journey for a while. So if you're experiencing writer's block, if you even have a fear, some people when they start have these beautiful, fantastic ideas and are afraid to put pen to paper or brush to canvas. So I can help, if you like, loosen up that channel so that can start going. And one of the things I'm really excited about is helping writers who get published and then they have to go out on a tour and read their work and engage with the people who are coming to see them. And so I help people bring their words to life. So that help people read, feel comfortable reading and enjoying the reading process. And part of that is helping people to tell stories. So people can come on storytelling courses. They're done live. They help people not only tell stories from a traditional oral storytelling point of view. So for me, the big thing for me is connection. So oral storytelling, that's the old way of just telling a story without a book in front of you. The connection is between you and the audience, and the story grows between you. So I teach people the old skills, but the old skills are really about connection, connecting to other people and connecting to yourself. So whenever you're telling a story, you're always, if you're telling it properly, secretly telling your own. And that's a huge gift. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about your book.
Thank you for asking. My book. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's only taken 28 minutes to get me around to my book. So my book, you can get it on Amazon and you can get it direct from the publisher, Blackstaff Press. And if you're in the UK, you can get it from Waterstones bookshops and a range of other bookshops. It's called The Faerie Thorn and Other Stories, Faerie, The Faerie Thorn and Other Stories. And it's a collection of 7 dark fairy tales. If you're, I suppose, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, if you like that film, or if you like Grimm's fairy tales, not the later editions, which have got the sanitized endings, but the original ones, which are a little bit brutal at times.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, high body count.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Then you probably would enjoy my book. It's not really for anybody, I'd say, under the age of 12, but certainly I think if you do like traditional tales, and I wrote it with the oral tradition in mind. So my background would be in traditional oral storytelling. And so what I did is I wrote as I would speak. And the idea is you read the book out loud to other people and notice what happens. Yes. It's, the words, human words, and you'll know this, from writing copy for your website and writing newsletters, words are magic. And to bring the magic to life, people have to read them. And when people speak them out loud, that magic is something else. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. So where can people find you online?
They can find me online on my website, janetalbotwriter.com. They can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Jane Talbot Writer. They can find me on Twitter as @IntrepidJane. And that was from my year of adventures. And I'm still going with that whole adventure thing.
Oh, are you? Are you still doing adventures? That's a great...
Well, I'm still following the thread. So at the moment, the news... So it's like embracing... That's the other lesson I learned. And I think it's important in business as well. So if we're self-employed and we're putting all our energy, putting a lot of energy into our business, I think it's okay to actually enjoy it and not be constantly worrying about, when am I going to get the results? All right, I'll really be enjoying my business when, I've got this website up and running like this, or I've got this many programs and this many bits, you can enjoy the whole process of building your business. And that's what I learned. That is the big thing, is to enjoy what you're doing when you're actually doing it. And so with my adventure and following the thread, I've never been to a book launch before. And now I've been to my own book launch. I've been on the radio this weekend. The local BBC Ulster are coming to do an outdoor broadcast with me to explore some of the places in my book. This is all new. And I think in the past, before the Year of Adventure, I'd be thinking this is great because this is going to lead to a point at the end. But I think what it's taught me is I am just soaking it up and following the thread and having these new experiences and being open to them. I'm not thinking this, I've got to be perfect here. My mandate to myself is, if there's one thing I have to do, or there's one thing I want to get out of this, is actually enjoy it while I'm having the experience.
That is excellent advice. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me, Holly.
It's great to chat with you about your adventures and what came of them.
Lovely to speak with you too.
Thank you for listening, and remember to visit readytobloom.com/130 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's guests, including links for topics that were discussed at readytobloom.com. That's ready, 2, bloom.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave us a quick review of this podcast. Thank you so much.